We've been cutting through the timeline of Air Max shoes history by cutting apart some of the most iconic Air Maxes out there with the Air Max 1, the Air Max 95, and now it's time to cover the most ridiculous, over-the-top, most superlative when the Air Max technology peaked in the Vapormax. To find out, is this actually pressurized? How easy is it to pop? How much air is actually in there? And does this air in the sole actually do anything? And if you did pop these, is it still wearable? And we've covered the timeline of the Air Max first 10 years a couple times with the Air Max 1 and the 95. So we're just gonna go through how this fits into the chronology, what is it? Chronology? So we're just gonna go over how this fits into the Air Max history timeline chronologically. Did you know in 2020 there was over 5 million car crashes? That's over 15,000 per day and over 600 per hour. And that's where the sponsor of this video, Morgan & Morgan, comes in, because they are the nation's largest injury law firm. And in some cases, size does matter. And there's certain things that you need to do anytime there's any kind of accident. Number one, make sure you're okay. Number two, make sure you get a police report filed. Number three, contact your insurance. And number four, make sure you have good legal representation. And that fourth step that is really vital to any kind of accident usually gets forgotten or doesn't get done quite the right way. And that's why it's so nice with Morgan & Morgan that you can file a claim in 8 clicks or less. And that's because they've modernized the injury law process by making it super easy to submit your claim. And you can submit your case details, signed contracts, upload documents, and medical records all from your cell phone. And you can even text your attorney and legal team throughout the entire duration of the case. So if you're ever injured in an accident, you can check out Morgan & Morgan and you can submit that claim in 8 clicks or less without having to leave your couch. So for more information, go to forthepeople.com or dial #law, that's #529 from your cell phone, and thanks again to Morgan & Morgan. So starting in March 26, 1987, Nike releases the Air Max that started the whole trend with the very first visible air unit on the heel. 1989, the Air Max 2 is released. 1990, the Air Max 90. 93, the Air Max 93. 1995, the Air Max 95. 97, the Air Max 97. 2003, the Air Max 2003. Finally, we get a little bit of a switch of the naming. In 2006, the 360 comes out, and it has the first full bubble under the foot and a precursor to the Vapormax. And then finally, in 2012, Nike debuts their Flyknit technology, which is an upper knit on a flat bed and then sewn together rather than a bunch of random pieces sewn together. So kind of a cool technology. And Flyknit opened the door for much lighter shoes. So in 2017, on the 30-year anniversary of the Air Max, Nike releases the Air Vapormax. And so what made this so special for the 30-year anniversary? Well, it was the first Air Max with zero foam. It was the first Air Max where the actual air bubbles made contact with the ground. It was the lightest Air Max to date because of the Flyknit and the lack of foam. It allegedly took 15 tries to get this sole to work correctly because it was tested by over 350 different runners. And the whole concept of the shoe was to cut out all the unnecessary bits to make it as light and performance-based as possible. And it was allegedly the pinnacle of Nike's running technology, with nods to the past and the future, and taking this tech to the ultimate extreme as a running shoe. But unfortunately, nobody liked it as a running shoe, and most runners do not consider it a running shoe. But it still is, to me, a very cool piece of history and an example of a brand taking things to the most extreme when they didn't have to really make something unique and to really flex their abilities, because that's what I like. I talk a lot of trash about Nike, but there's one thing that Nike does, and that's they take their tech to the ultimate extreme just to really flex those muscles, because that's right up my alley. I love when things are taken to the most minimal and the most extreme at the same time, so I love the shoe. So what is this shoe? Well, it's not the Vapormax that released in 2017, because if you actually want to wear this, you're gonna have to buy this version, so I wanted to review this one. So the brand is Nike, the style is the Air Vapormax 2021 FK. They weigh 12 ounces. They retail for $210 and they're made in Vietnam. So not the exact same shoe from 2017, but the important components that we're reviewing are basically identical. So let's look at the upper first. So this is that Flyknit upper, which is all about breathability and comfort. So we put it on the breathability test, and you can tell that this thing is ridiculously breathable. That smoke is dissipating not through just certain panels, but through the entire shoe. But a lot of times breathability comes at a cost, and that is usually durability. So we cut a couple slits in this to see if we get it to unravel. And as you can see, it held together pretty well, a lot better than a lot of the other materials that you just get one little cut in and the whole thing comes unraveled. Next, we burned it. Pretty clear it's a synthetic material because it melted. And it has these little string eyelets, which they never really inspire confidence for me. So we did the pull test on it. And if you remember, the Air Max 95s did 162 pounds to pull through. Well, these Vapormax did 112, so not the greatest results, but it's still enough that I would trust it if you're tying your shoes. I wouldn't really worry that much about ripping through those. So pretty clearly they pulled off the breathable lightweight upper, and I really like these knit uppers. It's a really cool minimalist reduction of an upper. But then if we look at the inside of the shoe, how is this structured? How is it different? Well, the one thing I do really like is this little heel cup is a separate piece from the knit upper, then everything else is just the knit. But if we look at the actual components, you know, the insole's recycled open cell foam, not great, nothing special. Most insoles don't have anything special about them, if we're being honest. And underneath, you can see it's just a classic Strobel stitch construction with quite literally zero foam anywhere, because I can see the light through that little lasting material. But one thing that I did notice is if I'm filling this right now, you can definitely feel the high spots and low spots of the air unit. So that leads me to question some of the build of this shoe. If they went a little bit too far with the minimalist and the lightweight, and they sacrificed a little bit of comfort for it. So I guess we'll see when we get it cut in half. And that leaves us with the most interesting parts of this shoe, the midsole and outsole. And this shoe really does feel really weird on foot. It's really unstable. Nacho Average Fine says there's a lot of people who've rolled their ankle in these trying to run in them. So first, is it actually pressurized? You know, you'd assume it is because of how hard it is to bend, but you just never know with Nike. So we stuck our little needle gauge in there. And once again, it's less about the accuracy of the reading, because it's like a $5 Amazon basketball pressure thing. And it's more about seeing if there is actually air in it above and beyond ambient air pressure. So we stuck that thing in there, and this thing has a lot of air pressure. It maxed out the entire gauge, and I don't think any other shoe's ever done that. And so it definitely has plenty of air on the inside. And if you didn't really look at this, you'd be like, oh, there's like 5 different air units in this. But there's really only 2, because some of these smaller air units are connected by just a little channel connecting the two. So we pop the other air unit at the forefoot, and that also has a ton of pressure. So it does seem like if they pull the foam out of the construction, they have to add a lot more pressure in the air, because you don't have all the sidewalls of that foam holding that low pressure air in place. Instead, you have to have a lot of pressure because you have air expanding everywhere around the air unit. So ranking it on our Air Max statistics sheet, pretty clearly at the top, but take it with a grain of salt because it's not the most accurate test. But what about how much air is in here? Because with the Air Max 1, we had 80 total cc's, the 95, we had 90 total cc's. With the Vapormax, once we got it drained out, put some water in there to measure it, it was 110 cc's in the heel and 60 cc's in the forefoot, coming in at a whopping total 170 cc's, topping the Air Max statistics sheet. What about how easy it is to pop? Well, if you remember, the Air Max 1 did 31 pounds, the Air Max 95, 77. What about the Vapormax? Well, it split right in between at 56.5 pounds, which really surprised me because I thought this would have to be a lot tougher of a material because the air unit is in direct contact with the ground. Obviously, it looks like there's additional reinforcement on top of the air unit where it touches the ground. What about the performance of this shoe before and after it's popped? Well, we did the ball drop test, and before it was popped, it bounced up 7 inches. After it was popped, it bounced up 6.4 inches. And then we did the bar drop test, and before it was popped, it bounced up 6.5 inches. After it was popped, it bounced up 6 inches. So pretty clearly, even from that test, you can tell it does change the performance of the shoe. And each of us in the shop wore these around after they were cut in half, and these are basically impossible to wear after they're popped. There's just so much going on, and there's so much sagging and moving, you just can't wear them casually, and the whole look of the shoe is lost because you don't have those supporting columns that the other shoes had. So is this shoe wearable after it's popped? Not even remotely wearable, unfortunately. But what about if you did actually step on a nail? How many pounds would it take to puncture through to the air unit itself? Well, once again, the Air Max 1s did 85, the Air Max 95s did 100 pounds, and the Vapormax took 93 pounds. So you just stay away from thumbtacks and nails because you will 100% pop these if you step on something too sharp. So let's cut this thing in half, see how it's all structured on the inside, see if they actually told the truth about there not being any foam on the inside, and see if there's anything else Nike is hiding inside of here.
You cut the mic.
All right, we got it cut in half, and if you're not subscribed, consider doing it because That's how we afford to do this. And I really enjoy doing these series where we're able to look at a certain shoe technology over a period of time by cutting apart several of the shoes that feature that technology. And the only way that we can do those series is if these videos continue to do well. So support it if you can. So let's see what's inside. So, Nike. I was all hyped on this shoe. I planned it, so I was like, oh, I love this shoe. It's so cool, it's over the top. This is actually a Nike that like Nike's told the truth about. But there's foam in this shoe, they lie. There's foam right there at the heel. So is it the most offensive crime of Nike's saying that their shoes don't have any foam and then having a little bit of foam? It's not nearly as bad as some like the premium stuff that they do, where they call things premium and put worse leather in it, a premium shoe. But it definitely isn't a foam-free midsole construction because you've got a little piece of foam right there. Is it enough for me to be turned away from this shoe? No, because it is gonna make it more comfortable and it's going to actually make the shoe more wearable. But I do kind of like that idea of having absolutely no foam in the construction. And now that I know that there is some, it kind of pulls some of the shine off, if I'm being honest. But one thing that is really impressive to me is if you look at the bottom of the shoe, it's pretty chaotic and they're kind of swirling around and interlinking and stuff. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of rhyme or reason to it. But once you cut it in half, you can see that you're standing on equally distributed tubes of air all the way to the back of the shoe, increasing in diameter as you go towards the heel. So it is a really cool way of distributing air across an entire sole while still keeping spots open for grip, while still having 2 air units to equally distribute the weight as you walk. And once you cut it in half, you can see that there is definitely some rhyme and reason to this chaotic sole structure, because once it's cut in half, you can see it's very purposeful. So now to the questions that we wanted to answer. Is it pressurized? Yes, the most pressure out of any Air Max that we've seen so far. How easy is it to pop? It's right in between the other 2 Air Maxes, but still, I wouldn't trust it around any nails or anything. How much air is on the inside? It has the most, once again, at 170 cc's. Does the air actually do anything? It definitely does. Out of any of the shoes, this shoe is the most dependent on the air. Is it wearable if it's popped? Not really, unless you want to spray some foam in it. And finally, is it worth the price of $210? Well, it's not the most durable shoe out there, it's not the most stable, and it's not even the most comfortable shoe for how much technology goes into this. But it is one thing above and beyond any other shoe, especially for the time that this was released, and that is the over-the-top, ridiculous proof of concept for Air Max technology and taking it to the most extreme and still having it work to some degree. Combining that form and the function to ultimately make what I love most about some of these shoes, which is a shoe designed with function first, and then that function informs the form, which gives you this ridiculous over-the-top superlative shoe that Nike made. So is it worth the $210? If you're looking at it just as a shoe, you take all the hype, all the technology, and you just look at it performance-based and how it wears, not even remotely worth $210. But if you look at it for what it is in this history and the pinnacle of Air Max technology before it got a little postmodern with the Scorpion, at its peak, when Nike really pushed this technology to the absolute limit, this is that shoe, and because of that, I love it. And even though they get a little bit sneaky with that little bit of foam in the heel that kind of lied to everybody on apparently every single shoe, I still love this shoe and I want to get a pair. Mostly just so I can own a piece of this history, but also to actually feel what it feels like to wear the maxed out Air Max technology. I did not mean for that to be a pun, but it is. So thanks for watching and thanks for everything you guys do, and let me know what Air Max shoe you want us to cut apart next. And thanks for everything you guys do in supporting this channel. It means a lot to me and everyone that works on the Rose Anvil crew. And check out our Rose Anvil 2 channel and the Rose Anvil Builds channel because we got some fun stuff cooking. So thank you guys. See ya.